the chat. Without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Jonathan Wilson from October Marketing. And he was referred to us by one of our StartupSauce members, Patrick Styles. And Patrick was like, Jonathan is this great dude, you got to get him. So we're like, Jonathan, we need you. So Jonathan, thanks so much for doing the call today. And I hand it over to you.
Thanks, Pat. And Patrick is a great guy. Appreciate him inviting me in. All right, so presumably y'all heard what we were talking about today. We're gonna talk about Google Ads. So brand campaigns, generally speaking, is the simplest thing to set up to get you up and running, and it's usually the most profitable campaign. So before I actually dive in, I'm just curious, how many people on this call have actually done anything with Google Ads in the past? 1, 2, 3. All right, awesome. What have you done? Can you tell me, like, you're ninjas and you've got it all set up and running, or just the basics, or how's it been for you? Nate, you were the first. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. My experience back in the day was, this is like probably 10-ish, 15 years ago, was a lot of affiliate marketing for the most part. So, okay. And that's where I made a good chunk of money doing affiliate marketing for other people. So.
Okay. 10 to 15. Yeah. That was a while back. Okay.
It was a while back. Yeah, I'm sure it's all changed now.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to get you up and running. Essentially, get it started and show you how to not burn a ton of money on the wrong things. And once this is set up, I'll give you some tips on how to move forward from there and expand your campaigns even further. As this slide says, this is very actionable. I believe that Sunny is going to give you a downloadable copy of the slides when this is done. It's very detail oriented. You'll be able to go through it step by step, follow the slides, and actually implement. There are sections of this that I'm going to breeze through pretty quickly because you don't need to see all those details live on the call. And as Sunny has already said, please save your questions for the end. I've been doing this for a while. So I got into marketing because I was working for a software development company back during the .com bubble days. And I got tired of seeing us build platforms that our customers would run for a while, then close or sell the business. I got really curious about that. And it turned out that their #1 problem was sales. So I switched my career from IT to marketing, hoping to find a systematic way to make sure that my customers would actually succeed, not just build something and flop. Here's a few examples. I have made a few $1 million for clients of mine. All right, into the nitty gritty. So a brand campaign is specifically, and let me take a step back. So this is all about Google search. This is literally when somebody goes to google.com and they type something in, and you want your ad, your results to be in front of them and hopefully above all your competitors. When it comes to a brand campaign, this means people who are specifically looking for you. So they have heard about you somewhere. Could be word of mouth, could be that they saw an ad, heard something, heard you on a podcast, saw something in a print publication that you had an article in. And now that they know you, they want to know more about you. So they're trying to find you. Because of that small step of familiarity with you, meaning your company, these campaigns are usually considerably higher profit margin than other campaigns. So in other contexts, there's lots of other ways to run campaigns, but in those other cases, they're not familiar with you yet, most likely. And so they may not be quite so likely to proceed with signing up with your solution. In a case like this, they've already heard of you somehow, and it's a lot easier to push them over the finish line. One of the things about this, let me just go back one step. So one of the things about this also, if you take what I just said to think of that as an ecosystem, I'm going to close the chat so I can't see the questions coming in. One of the things about this is it works in the context of a bigger ecosystem, right? So there's other things happening. Maybe you're doing PR, maybe you're doing Facebook ads, maybe you're on LinkedIn, maybe you've got cold outreach going, and it creates a system where you have like a feedback loop. And quite often the degree to which you're doing other marketing endeavors can have a really big effect on this. And I'm going to tell you one quick story as an example. So I was working with a company that was running Facebook and Google, and every time they would do an analysis, they would conclude that Google ads were making them about a 9x ROI, and Facebook ads was always neutral, right? So they would spend $1 and make $1 on Facebook ads. They finally persuaded the agency that was involved to just stop the Facebook ads, and guess what happened? The ROI on Google went way down. So what was happening was people were seeing the Facebook ads, hearing about the company for the first time, but then they wanted to know more about the company than they were getting from the Facebook ad. And for whatever reason, instead of clicking on the Facebook ad, they would go search on Google. And so that is a really great example of why you need to be there, be present on Google, because people are, and Facebook's only an example in this case, but people are going to hop on over there and try to find out more about you. So another reason that you want to be there, the last one on this slide, is not only so that you are there, but to keep your competitors from siphoning away your traffic. And this is a bigger deal than you might know. So particularly in the B2B space, you have probably seen this, but I'm just going to give you some funny examples. So, and these are not all B2B, but these were some ads that I thought were particularly funny. So here's a company called Coinly, and their competitor is after them. And if you look at the bottom of this slide, they're quite literally laughing at them in their ad. See that? LOL, right? And this is getting common where your competitors trying to snatch your traffic are going to be probably provocative about it and poking fun at you. So you've got to make sure that your ad is above theirs, and definitely giving the right incentives and persuading people to click through and get to your spot first before they get to this other funny business. So the LOL ad is particularly funny. A lot of them may not be so funny, but they're going to be things like this. So look at the bottom of this one. They're saying, hey, we're the best alternative to Pipedrive, right? So you want to be above all that. Here's another one. Are you sure? So this, I can't remember who I found this competitor ad under, but they were literally trying to get you to second guess yourself about the company you were trying to connect with and switch over to this one instead. So you got to be able to beat all of these. All right. The other reason, besides the competitors, the other thing is, so some people sometimes say, well, why not just go with the organic listings? If you are certain that your organic listings are full, they're at the top of the page, they're above the competitors, or there are no competitors, then great. But if there are competitors, the only way to get with ads, the only way to get on top of them is with an ad of your own. And the only way to send people exactly where you want to go and say exactly what you want to say is with an ad. So you can see here in this example, LastPass has both an ad and an organic listing, but they have no control over the way the organic listing is worded and what the other pages on the site are that Google Organic is going to send them to. With their ad, they're able to send them to exactly where they want searchers to go. So the How It Works article and other things like that. Okay, where this fits in the funnel. So this is never going to be somebody who's not heard of you before, because otherwise they wouldn't be searching. So they're going to be a little bit warmer. They're going to be people who are either have heard of you and are trying to find more about your company, or they're already totally persuaded that you're the solution for them and they're just trying to get to your site today. All right, when it comes to Google itself, probably during setup, the most dangerous thing that happens is that there's a lot of defaults that are really in Google's favor, not yours. And the main, probably the most important thing you could get out of this call today, aside from the fundamental 1, 2, 3s of setup, is how to avoid losing money to these traffic traps. All right, let's keep moving here. Yep, I do have an article on my site. You can look that up later and get even more details. Okay, so from this point on, as I mentioned earlier, this is very detail oriented, a lot of steps. I am going to move through some of this pretty quickly because you'll be able to download the slides, take your own pace, set your own pace, and do it 1, 2, 3 in order. And I just want to get this going for you, and I'll keep it short on the call. You will have to have a Google login. If you're not familiar with that, it is super easy to get. You just go to any Google property and sign up. You can use a Gmail account or any other email address of your own. All right, simply go to ads.google.com. Some of these screenshots, Google is always changing things. So the screenshots that the screen you arrive at may look a little different from the screenshot itself. When you start setting up the ads account, unfortunately, Google is going to force you to set up one of their smart and automated campaigns immediately on the spot while you're trying to open the account. So basically, you'll want to buzz through that setup pretty quickly. Let me just show you how that looks. So it's going to ask you some really basic questions. It's going to want to know your website URL. It's going to scan your site. It's going to auto-suggest some ads, keywords, and similar things. And it's going to suggest the budget. You want to just override that, pick a small budget, either the smallest one they offer or enter your own. Right, and then it's going to ask for billing. You cannot get through the setup without entering your billing details, but you will be able to shut it off immediately. So you do not have to spend money as soon as this is on. You can keep that shut off. Excuse me. When you get to this screen, this is important. You'll want to skip this. Do not let Google try to automatically set up your tracking for you. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Right, when you get to the end of the setup process, you will be in Google's smart mode. Smart mode basically means Google's driving. They have all the control. You don't have hardly any. So you want to escape from smart mode jail as quickly as possible. If you look at the top, there'll be a tool icon. You can click on switch to expert mode. It'll want you to confirm. You can do that. And then a second time, click switch view, and you will finally land in the real Google Ads interface, which looks like this. When you get here, the auto-created campaign that just happened during the account setup process is going to be right there. Should be the only one. There'll be that little green dot. I hope y'all, let me just duplicate this real quick so we can see this better. There'll be this little green dot right next to the campaign right here. You can click on that and choose pause so that the smart mode campaign is no longer running. And at that point, no money is being spent. All right, now you can get into actually creating what you want, which is your own campaign. There'll be this blue circle, click the plus sign, tell it you want a new campaign. Tell it for brand campaigns, you're gonna want to choose this last one, create a campaign without Google's guidance. You want only a search campaign, upper left. You don't need any of these, but if it forces you to check one with it before you can proceed, then you can just do website visits. All right, name it brand. This is the first, so I mentioned earlier, the ignorance tax where Google's gonna suck money out of your pocket. This is the first one. So you definitely want to uncheck these. What's gonna happen is if you leave this on, Google is going to take your text ad. It's going to auto dynamically add their images and other formatting to it, and then just start running it on websites all over the web. So like a banner ad is when you go to like weather, check the weather, the news or something like that, and you see this little image on the top or the side. So basically, if this lower box on the display network is checked, Google's going to take your ads and just run wild with it and show it instead of on Google search, show it all over the web on those kinds of properties in the format of a display ad, and pretty much guarantee that is going to totally waste your money. Initially, turn search network off as well, this one called search partners. The reason for that is that search partners is like, there's a handful of large content sites that run kind of an embedded Google search engine, and you don't usually want to be in there. It is something that occasionally has value and is worth testing, but not during initial setup. All right, you can move on past the end of the setup screen. Make sure your location is accurate, serving ads where you actually have customers. Be aware that United States will include like Alaska, Hawaii, and all that. So if for any reason you only serve the lower 48 states, and you'd want to change this and just add in all the states one at a time. Okay, you'd want to expand that location option screen and switch the default down to here. So this is another trap. You can choose United States, But if this location options is left to the default setting, Google will happily show your ads all over the world because it's trapping you with this little part that says those who show interest in the United States. Nice little loophole. Google's full of these. Yeah, English unless you need something else. Do not add an audience at this point. You can put $1 in here and you can figure out exactly what your budget is later. The way Google handles budgets is they take whatever you enter for a daily budget and they average it out across 30 days. That means that some days they will spend more and some days they will spend less, but according to their policy, it should average out at the end of a month. All right, next one. So maximize for clicks is the default setting, and that basically means that Google is going to try to find all the cheapest clicks they can and send them your way. When you're doing a brand campaign, you're going to want to switch this to a manual setting so that you can control exactly how much you're paying per click. And then here again, this is another attempt to grab money out of your wallet. So uncheck this box here, which that box is basically giving them permission to automatically override your bid setting. Turn that off. Extensions. So, and I should have done a little bit better job on this slide, but when you build these out, they make your ad bigger on the page. And I want to be real clear about that. So let me scroll back up. And so without those extensions, your ad is only as big as this. I'm curious, can y'all see my mouse moving? Does that work? Okay. So by default, your ad is just the URL, the blue headline, and the small bit of text underneath, right? Same as these last two at the bottom. With the extension, these other things turn on, your ad becomes very large on the page, which is exactly what you want to get attention and kind of take over the screen. All right, once that's done, you'll want to create an ad group. The name doesn't matter. You can call it brand again or call it ad group 1. And into here, you literally want to put in the name of your brand and its URL. Now, you can see in the slide, there is quote marks and brackets around these. Those delimiters cause Google to constrain everything down to exactly your name or your URL. If you don't put those quotes and brackets on there, Google will decide on its own what your brand name means, and it will show ads for your brand under all kinds of other searches. And I've seen some pretty wild stuff where it's like they just totally got it wrong and they're showing for searches that are totally outside your industry and definitely the wrong people. So this is really important. So just to clarify that, when you're on this screen, you're going to type into this box right here, and you're going to type your company name and URL in pairs with a quote mark around one set and a bracket around the other set. All right, now you'll create your first ad. Basically, it's pretty simple. You want your URL, and the URL can be your homepage if your homepage is well optimized and designed for lead generation. If you have a funnel or a landing page that you would prefer the traffic to go to, definitely use that instead. The headline should be pretty straightforward. It's character limited. It basically needs to be your company name. And the other parts of the ad need to be what you have to offer, why they should choose you, basically features and benefits. An interesting thing about Google Ads is that compared to Facebook, LinkedIn, social media and such, you don't really need to get super fancy with your marketing hooks or tell a story or anything like that. You totally should split test over time, many different headlines and angles, but pretty straightforward features and benefits, why choose you, something that builds your authority and credibility. All the basics is what normally works best in a Google ad. Just gonna skip on through some of these for the sake of time. Nowadays, so that I chose this screenshot so we could see the parts of the ad. Nowadays, you're going to be presented with a screen that looks more like this. Basically, Google now wants you to put in a lot more options, and they are going to pick which ones to show, kind of trying to dynamically discover the best ad combination. The important part here is you want the very first headline, again, to be your company name. And you want to click this tiny little thing right here, which looks like a push pin, to make sure that your company name is always at the very top of the ad. All right. Pretty fundamental. If these things happen, you can fix them or move on. And now you've got your first brand campaign up and live. Okay. You may want to go down, all the settings are under the wrench. You may want to double check your billing, make sure everything is the way you actually expect payment methods to go. You can switch from a credit card to something like auto drafting out of your checking account or whatever, if you prefer that. Once you've run enough processing, enough time and ad spend through your account, you can apply for invoicing instead, if that fits your company better. Yep. Funny enough, Google will probably mistreat you over failed payments more than anything. So I've seen a number of cases where people had a great Google account. They had a good CPA. Everything was working fine. Their credit card got full or expired or something like that, and it bounced. You would think like, oh, no problem, put a new card in there and everything's going to be fine. But Google gets really grumpy when that happens, and performance takes usually a long time to return. So just always make sure that your payment method, your card, whatever it is in great shape, is not going to get rejected. And there is a spot for a backup card as well. Okay, account level settings. So on any screen, you can get down into the settings here. Just click on settings and then down to account settings. And you're going to want to change a few things. Make sure this is on. Otherwise, Google may lose track of who came from an ad, and then they will not report conversions correctly. You want to turn these things off. So check all these, click save. Basically, that makes sure that Google kind of filters out your company so that you're not showing up next to really ugly content on the web. Same for this. All right. And one more, definitely make sure that automatic suggestions is off. Otherwise, Google will be happily creating stuff for you in the background, running it and spending your money on it. And so you'll look up one day and say, like, where did this ad come from? You'll be spending money on it, and having never seen it before, it could say who knows what. Their AI does get smarter all the time, but you really want to keep control over all that stuff. All right, when you reach this point, you have succeeded in setting up your account and building your first campaign. And Google can definitely take your money at this point. Okay. What you don't have yet, though, is a way to prove if this is working for you or not. Now, in the context of a brand campaign, it's probably the one case where you could run blind and have a reasonable chance at success. But for anything else you do, if you come along to set up a regular keyword-based campaign, or if you ever run display or YouTube campaigns, you won't have a clue if they're working for you or not unless you actually set up your conversion tracking. All right, so essentially, I'm assuming that most of you are builders. You probably have access to developers or a team of developers. And essentially, you've got to get some JavaScript code out of your particular Google Ads account and install that into your site. All right. Quite often, I get asked, why not just set up Google Analytics and import from there? You can do that. In a nutshell, it does not work as well. It's time delayed, and Google Analytics usually counts a little bit less than the Google Ads tracking will. One of the reasons for that is that analytics blockers are pretty common, whereas general JavaScript blockers or Google Ads specific blockers are not too common. Right, so again, up under tools, there's conversions. You'll want to, so this is what it looks like when it is set up. You'll want to have one of these for everything that someone can take a reasonable action on your website. So if you have a newsletter opt-in form, a application form, a free trial, a purchase, or a phone call to your sales team, you're going to want to be tracking each one of those separately. Right? I'm thinking that for most software as a service companies, you're going to have a free trial and a purchase, and those are probably the two you need the most. When you first get to that screen, it's going to look kind of blank like this. Just click the blue button. You'll do website tracking or phone calls if that's what you're setting up. Looks like this. You just, the category is, it's pretty self-explanatory. Open that menu and choose a lead form or a purchase, whatever applies. Give it a name that makes sense to you so that you'll always know exactly what you're looking at when you come into this screen. Like that, purchase. When you go through the settings, set it basically exactly like you see on this screen. Google used to default the attribution model to last click, which is horrible. I don't want to get into attribution model details here at the moment. Generally recommend that you set it to linear or data driven. More and more often nowadays, they will send you straight to data driven as the default option. And if that is the case, that's good. Leave it alone. Further down that same screen, you see this, install the tag yourself. And basically you want to get, this is the JavaScript. You want to get this over to your developer. There's two parts to the code. This first part that is thicker goes globally on every page on your site. And then there is a second bit of JavaScript code that is the exact code that needs to fire when the action is taken. So this means when they submit the form and they get to the destination page, the receipt page, or maybe on button click, this little bit of JavaScript code needs to fire. Get your developers to handle that for you. All right. When it comes to phone calls, there's several different ways to do that. Again, you can refer back to the slides later. If you want to just run with it, Google has some built-in phone call tracking. It's free. They don't charge you extra for it. It basically, when somebody comes to your site from an ad, it swaps out the phone number so that they are literally dialing through a phone pool of Google's. Google knows based on the time of the call and the number that was displayed, which ad they came from, and that will get the tracking info back into your account. If you have a high ticket sales process, you might want to look into using a third-party tool. CallRail is really good. Basically, it's a very similar thing. It sends through the third-party company's phone system. They will record the call, and you can come back later and score it, like this turned into a sale, or this was a dud, or they were tire kickers. And then that way you have much better quality conversion data back in your Google Ads account, because only the ones that turn into a sale or were a good lead are the only ones that get marked as a conversion. All right, if you use Google's free code, there's a whole separate bit to install in your on your header code on your site. Ad extensions, I already talked about this a little bit, but basically that's the part that makes those ads bigger at the top of the page. You want to max that out. The more of these you can, not everybody wants to use all of these, but the more of them you can use, the bigger your ad will be on the page and the more attention your ad will get. Every extension you build has its own reporting, and you can cycle through these or change these the same way you would split test ads. You can split test extensions. You'll see your conversion rate, cost per conversion, and all that. Over time, you can turn off the low quality ones and keep looking for better ones. Ads are exactly the same. Okay, in the slides, I've got some recommendations for you guys about landing pages, but I'm just going to skip this whole section for now. Again, essentially, if you have built a funnel, you will want your ads to direct traffic there instead of to your home page. If you do have, so Google thrives on data. The whole thing, as you probably know, it's one of the world's biggest companies. They're always pushing for more automation. Eventually, they're probably going to take all control away from us. Everything's going to be automated with their algorithms. The way that works, if it's going to work well, it works with data. And so if you do have Google Analytics, YouTube, or anything else, you'll want to link that up in the settings. All right. Okay, so bear in mind that brand campaigns are just a simple getting started. There is a world of traffic out there way beyond brand. There's all the keywords. So if people have a problem and your product solves that problem, you're a solution for it, you would want to have your ad showing for any search that is someone looking to solve that problem or find that solution. YouTube is the world's #2 search engine in terms of volume, not to mention one of the largest sites in the world. If you run, so YouTube campaigns are run inside the Google Ads interface, same thing we've been talking about today. That is probably your #1 way to get in front of an ideal customer if they have never heard of you before and you know they're out there and you just want to get an ad in front of them and tell your story. Same for display ads. There's also remarketing, which is extremely valuable for you guys. Anybody who has become a good lead for you and is in the trial period, I think from working with software companies in the past, getting those trial users to actually engage and interact during the trial and get used to your software and learn to love it is really important. And of course, a lot of people will sign up and then get busy or get lost and never come back again. You can show remarketing ads to them during that trial period, showing use cases, how to use the software, feature and benefits, testimonials, social proof, and just remind them and encourage them to get back in there, actually use and play with the platform, and hopefully they'll stick around and actually sign up and pay. All right. Another campaign, so playing off of what I showed you at the beginning, you can go bid on your competitors' names, and just like these folks, you can show ads from people who already know of your top competitor and persuade them to come over and take a look at you. You know that those people are ideal leads because if they're looking at your competitor, they are clearly in the market for your same product. Does that make sense? Training is done. That's not going to work. But if you just like want to know if this is right for you, or if Google Ads is right for you, anything like that, just there's my email again, info@octobermarketing.com. Just shoot me an email. Let's talk. I'm happy to help all of you out.